this system is going to rip apart. And by rip apart, I mean, like, there's a day where you go and your debit card doesn't work. Like, that's a fact. Because what's happened is we've built this system on fake dollars, on fake dollars, on fake dollars. We've malinvested, sure. But we've created over $27 trillion, and we don't know how many are in the Euro system. And the Euro system has no reserve requirements. Neither do we now. But what essentially that means is I bring you $100 to your bank. You got to keep 10 of it, theoretically, back in the day. You have to keep 10 of it in there for a reserve because maybe, you know, I buy a smoothie for $5 and you need to be able to clear it. Well, that other $90 you can loan out. So you loan out to my buddy, and then my buddy brings it back into your bank, and you got to keep 9 of that, but you can loan out 81. So essentially, what's happened is you've had a deposit of 100 originally, but sitting in the bank, you don't have any of that. Like, you've created. So you've created like $170 based on, at that point in time, on 2 transactions of an initial 100. I mean, the maths can really get crazy. Essentially, what happens is the money supply is 10 times, but at this point in time, 100 times larger than the actual true money supply. It's all built on debt. The problem with that is there's no reverse gear. So the second that one person defaults, like the bond market that's in a hybrid bubble, once the bond market starts to default, well, then everything starts to default. And so it's like you could be fine, but you know, if everyone around you starts defaulting and then no one's buying goods and services, you're only fine for so long. It's essentially a reset, and you may hear this, the Great Reset. So it's a reset, and we're walking very close to this moment where these things are going to happen. And the best thing you can do is to get out of the system best you can, meaning like have sovereignty over your supply chain. If you can produce elements of your own food supply, you should. If you can put yourself on your own central bank standard, if you can do your own gold and silver and potentially speculative crypto standard, you should. If there are ways that you can transact when eventually the banks get shut down, and I mean they're going to shut down. I know it sounds crazy right now, but they did it in the 30s for years. They were closed for, some of them were closed for over 3 years, some of them up to 5 years. Not kidding. I mean, depositors weren't able to get their money out for over 5 years. That's why there's such a Great Depression. We like to think today that, you know, we're beyond that, but the reality is that the math and the numbers are so much worse now than they were previous to everything blowing up in 29. It's so much worse now, and our supply chains are breaking down, and we have this overpopulation of managerials class, and we have this overpopulation of elites. And so we're going to move to that spot where we're going to fight over what's left. And then it's going to start to unwind, and it's going to continue on that trend until acted upon by an equal or opposite force. And so until we decide to embrace free markets, free market capitalism, no regulations, oh, what about all the tragic things that can happen? It's how your food gets on the shelves. But we're going to actually get to a spot where the food's not on the shelves. And what are people going to do then? And it's going to get very interesting. And so as we're inflating the poor and the former middle class, because I would argue there is no middle class now, they're all a paycheck away from bankruptcy, they're going to get squeezed. Higher food prices, higher fuel prices, higher housing prices, and their wages are going to stay flat, maybe go up a little bit, but they're not going to keep up with the inflation. And what happens is essentially people that weren't that well off to begin with are now even further not well off. And you end up with the people that were really well off before. And, you know, like everyone likes to hate on Elon Musk. I like the guy, but yeah, he's like the world's richest dude, him and Bezos. Like, but what's creating that obnoxious level of wealth is all of this money printing. And it's all got to go somewhere. And so it's plowing into their balance sheets. And so what's happening is the rich are getting much richer, fabulously richer, and the poor are getting much poorer. And so we don't have this middle class, so we don't have like this natural safety net inside of our society. So what happens is you have the poor, you have the haves and the have-nots. And so those situations typically, historically, get violent. And there's a lack of food and a lack of supplies, and there's a lack of brake pads and a lack of air filters, and there's a lack. And so what happens is eventually the system will stabilize, but it'll probably stabilize as a much lower level. At the same time, we have a political elite class which has been in power for literally over 50 years. And they, one, don't know anything about the actual economy, but two, are doing things like, oh, we're going to mandate this, we're going to mandate that, we're going to, and so they're actually at the same time like cutting the legs off the supply chain. and they're really doing the economy a disservice. So we're going to deal with the global supply crisis because of the cerveza sickness or whatever it is, and that's a global thing in nature. So all the political elites all over the world are freaking out over it because it's an opportunity for them to increase their power, to flex their muscles. And what you guys need to understand is, like, this system is going to end. It's just what it looks like when it ends. We can't control that. But what we can do is we can save, we can get out of debt. Well, if it's going to inflate, shouldn't I have more debt? Nah, not yet, not really. If you've got to pay the debt, it's not that great a debt. If somebody else pays the debt, like you got a rental property and you got a mortgage on it, it's different. But like, what if they lose their job? What if those jobs aren't available? You know, it's a reset. And at the end of the day, who owns that mortgage? The central bank owns the mortgage. Well, I got it through my local banking branch. No, they sold it off. The central bank owns over 65% of all of the mortgages in North America. I would argue by the time we get to like the actual moment where this entire thing unwinds and unwinds quickly, they'll probably have over 80%. And then we'll be able to, you know, we'll have this new society. We'll move into a renter economy for quite a while. And it's sad, but it's just like, you know, Hayek and these Austrian economists wrote about this in the 50s. And so it's not like hasn't been known. It's just, you know, ideally play it for yourself. I mean, benefit for yourself on what's going to happen. Save silver, gold. I can help you with that. I sell silver on behalf of a large silver broker, silver and gold. Cryptos. If you're going to mess with cryptos, you can't buy them on Robinhood. You have to own them. You have to own the keys to them. Meaning, like, it's in your own wallet. You own the keys to your own wallet. There's lots of information out there on how to do that, but you need to do that. And then you've got to get to that spot where, like, you have sovereignty over, like, your food supply if you can. You have sovereignty over different elements of your life. I mean, heaven forbid you're in a situation where, like, they're mandating you take an experimental drug to keep your job. I mean, this is how insane this is getting. But the political elites they've degraded to that point where they don't know, they don't get it. And it's like, well, we'll make this mandate. We'll enforce our will. We'll be tyrants. What are you going to do? We got F-22s. What are you going to do? And it's like, you can see what they're doing. They're egging on this situation. And I hate to say it, but you have to be real about this. We are approaching some sort of crazy kinetic events. I mean, it's possible everything could remain chill, but it just seems pretty fractured at this point. And I don't think it's going to remain chill. And when the food supply runs out, I know that sounds crazy now, but when it starts to get really in short supply, it starts to get really expensive, people are going to start getting some radical ideas. And the rise of populism is already here. We saw that with the Trump movement. It's already here. And yeah, you can impress those people for so long, but those are the people that could do something, and it would be really bad. And we have our femdoms, our LGBTQ, or, you know, our managerial class, you know, woke purple hair, you know, managerial 45-year-old childless cat lady who's going to go, oh, well, we can do a lot of different things to these people. I think you may be very surprised what is very possible, and it wouldn't take much effort. It just has to start. And once it starts, you're not putting that fire out. That fire is going to burn itself out. And so these are the times we live in. This is the fourth turning. I'll link to this book. It's an amazing book down below. It really gave me a perspective on where we're at. I've done some other videos on this. But my message is, look at what the central bank came out yesterday and said. We're going to taper because of the inflation. Everyone expects them to taper. They need to raise interest rates, but they can't. Because if they do, the entire thing falls apart. Everything falls apart immediately. That moment I told you where the banks are locked, that's when it happens. The stock market crashes. I mean, 1929 crash. I mean, gone. It'll happen so much faster now because everything's electronic. So they came out and said, oh, well, we're going to taper. No, they didn't say that. What they said is, well, instead of buying $120 billion in assets a month, you're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. You guys are buying $120 billion in assets a month? Who gets this money? Whose assets? Where are they? What? They're just buying it all. They're buying real estate. They're buying, commercial properties. They're buying everything to keep it propped up. We're going to do a minimum of 90. Okay, so you're going to taper? Yes, we're going to do a minimum of 90. Whoa, wait a second. Are you going to do less than 120? We're going to do a minimum of 90. But no top. Got it. So they're going to have to continue to buy more and more and more because we're in the end game and they've got to speed it up. Also, the system falls apart if they don't. So we end with this central bank owns it all game. Central bank is kind of owned by the government, but not. And then the people are impoverished. I mean, essentially they go through possibly a hyperinflation or just a serious inflation, or an epic deflation where all their assets deflate. You own a house, it's worth 200 grand, you have a mortgage of 100 grand on it, all of a sudden the thing is worth 70 grand. Oh, that could never happen. Real estate always goes up. Well, real estate only goes up when they print it. When they print, yeah, real estate goes up relative to the dollars that get weaker, but real estate's not going up. Real estate goes in a perfect line with the printing press. All these things are, it's either going to hyperinflate, or it's going to inflate enough to where there's a war-like event, or it's going to rapidly deflate, and then they're going to move you into a new system, which will be a fully tracked digital currency. And that is why I make videos like this, because it's like, I know you guys want, I know this audience likes other videos on the contracting and the machines, and like, cool. If you lose your liberty, you have nothing. Nothing. And people are freely giving it away. Oh, I'll put my mask on, I'll take my medicine, I'll do whatever I'm told, I'll take my digital currency. And that's a spot where, like, it sucks for you because I can just leave. I mean, I can get a chartered plane and freaking leave anytime I want. I mean, I've set myself up to do that. I'd rather stay here. I'm an American. I'd rather, help rebuild this country. But if this country wants to become a third world nation like, Argentina or Venezuela, and they're going to freely give up their liberties and just accept their slavery, I mean, I'm not hanging out to see how that ends. I might come back and buy it all when it's all failed. It's all smoky ruin. But nonetheless, I put this stuff out because you've got to do something about this. You've got to look at what's going on, and you've got to have a game plan. And it's just taking small actions. Don't be paralyzed by the fear of what could happen, but continue to take small actions to move forward, to just become a little bit more sovereign. You can get dry food storage. You can get some cash out of the bank. Eventually, they'll take the cash away. They'll make it illegal. They just did it in India this last year. They had to have full control of the system. You are not a free individual. You lost your freedom in 1913 when the central bank and the IRS were created. There was no income taxes prior to that. Well, how did we build the roads and the bridges? Yeah, it got along just fine, dude. You'd be amazed how much a free market system is so much better than anything centrally planned, but we don't have the appetite. We're too fake and gay for that to happen. Oh, we can't have people lose their jobs. Well, they're not going to lose their jobs. They're going to lose their homes, their jobs, and their food supply at the same time. And that's the cost of continuing this party way past its time. So I appreciate your attention. Love to hear you guys in the comments. We'll get back to busting out videos on the daily. And yeah, it was good.